afternoon. Good afternoon. Hi, I'm from a call and response culture, so when I say good afternoon, I need to hear something so that I make sure I'm not in this room by myself. So we're gonna try it one more time. Good afternoon. Thank you, thank you. That helps us all keep our energy and our awareness in this space. I'm a teacher by training, so I know that when you're in a room, whoever's doing the most talking is the one who's doing the most learning. And it is truly my heart and goal to ensure that I am leaving you equipped to do something amazing in your practices when you leave from here. This is the Transformation in Action track. So if you came to just consume a lot of information, I'm sorry. I am going to put you to some work while we are in here so we can make sure that we are leading in the legal profession in the way that the law needs us to show up today. So you are in the right place if you are here to figure out how you can be intentional in your language and advocacy and ensure that you are actually empowering your clients and leaving them in a better position, not just because you've handled parts of their legal matter, but because you've set them on a trajectory to know that they too can solve problems that come their way. I always like to start and frame us in this space. The slide says, as legal professionals, our knowledge and skills place us in a position of power and privilege over our clients. And I think it's incredibly important to be grounded and rooted in that reality, that regardless of whatever circumstance that has brought you to the practice of law, regardless of whatever things you had or didn't have in your life, the mere fact that you are in this space, the mere fact that you have some sort of knowledge of how the legal process works in either your practice area or in the way that business works, et cetera, places you in a position of knowledge, of power and privilege over your clients. And so what I will continuously ask you today is, what are you going to do with that power and that privilege? I am Nkoyo Efyong Lewis. I am currently the Director of Law Practice Management for the State Bar of Georgia. Prior to that, I ran my own law practice in the education and nonprofit space. I like to call myself a recovering practicing attorney. I'm sitting on the other side of practicing, and I'm loving it. So, bless all of y'all who are still in the trenches. We need you, but I'm glad that I'm not practicing right now. I also like to say that I'm an equity-centered lawyering enthusiast. I am very intentional about making sure that we design a legal system that actually leads to justice. And if you've looked at any of the surveys that go out there about law and the legal profession as a whole, most of our consumers do not find that we are helping them to get to justice. And that is a huge concern. That is a huge problem, that those of us who are charged with being the arbiters of justice are not perceived outside of our community as being people who are intentional about pursuing justice. And so my hope is that our time today, I will help you find ways that you can give equity. I like to say I have a speech talking about the equity that we give, because a lot of times we were thinking, oh, the legal system is this, it's not my fault, it's not these things, but there are things that you can do every single day in your practice to give a little bit more equity to your clients, to give a little bit more power, a little bit more opportunity, a little bit more hope. And so it is my goal that during our time today, that we talk about why that's important, we talk about some things that you can do, and then you get in here and actually start thinking about what you're gonna do today, tomorrow, next week, to make sure that your practice is a little bit more client empowered. The world has shifted. This is not the same playing field that we even had 2 years ago. From changing demographics to polarizing social events and the rapid advances in technology, everything is different. And what excites me about that is that it gives us so much opportunity to recreate in a system that hasn't always been set up effectively in the first place. And so I love to see opportunity where people see volatility, confusion, chaos, because for me, it's like, well, anything I try is better than whatever we have. So I want to leave you with at least that mindset, that in this space, we are at such an amazing time to start innovating in the practice of law, and that can start immediately with just how we show up and represent our clients, how we think about and design our law practices, and how we interact with each other within this sort of legal ecosystem. And because things are so different, we cannot afford to stay the same. I always love having conversations with people who are concerned about AI and venture capitalists and all these people coming into the legal field. And what I want to remind people, what I want to ground and root you in, is that most people who have a legal problem are circumventing lawyers in the first place. They're not solving their problems with us. And so there's an amazing opportunity for us to think differently about how we go out and meet people at their need and bring them to a better place. So let me get personal with you. This is me. Circa 2013, I was a fresh out of law school law student. I don't even know if when I took this picture, I knew whether I had passed the bar at that point. Working in a big law firm, thinking like, Mama, I made it! Like I was the first in my family to be a practicing attorney in the United States. Like I lived with all of that, like. And then also living the reality of being a junior associate who had no idea what I was doing in a big law firm with people who didn't look anything like me. So, you live in this sort of like dual world. And I remember having a case, working on a lot of, they always send the junior associates to do all the pro bono work in the big law firm. So I'm over there working my case, feeling really proud of myself, like I'm gonna go get this landlord-tenant matter situated. I had a client. She was a mother, young mother, children, home, mold, all sorts of crazy things going on there. And I was like, I'm gonna save the day. And that's what I went out and did. And I got a great result for her. Like, I was really proud. Like, this is my first case. I was like super excited. Like, I got her a great result. And what was fascinating is even though I told her all of these things were resolved for her and she didn't have to worry, she was not happy with her experience interacting with me as her attorney. And I was baffled because while she was like, great, yes, sure, all this stuff, but like every interaction she had with me, she felt like she wasn't important, that she was devalued, that I wasn't hearing what she had to say, and that like basically like I went and did this thing for her, to her, but not with her. And I remember just being like so floored, like, do you know how much it costs for me to get this law degree and what I got to do to go into this and like all these things that I did that went into this case? But what I didn't realize at that moment is that I wasn't the protagonist in the story. This win wasn't supposed to be my win. It was supposed to be hers. And she didn't feel empowered. She didn't feel any more equipped to be able to navigate any type of situation that came up because I never extended any sort of knowledge sharing, moving together in this process with her. I, like the system and many other systems, just did things to her and then expected her to be appreciative of the fact that she got something. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that. But it was a very formative experience in my life because I went into the practice of law, like many of you, to do good. I was here with this heart to make sure that people who didn't have access or a voice had access and a voice and an opportunity to solve their problems. And here was a client who was saying, while we got to a resolution, it didn't feel good in the process, and it didn't feel like I was any better off than in any other sort of system or experience that I've been in. And so for us, what was miscommunication was truly missed communication. There was an opportunity to help her be better in her own life and move forward and know how to navigate a system, which is something that many of our clients, depending on what area of law you practice in, may have repeat issues that they may not be able to always hire an attorney to resolve. And she was no better equipped to deal with this issue if she went to another landlord or another situation and found herself in the same place. And for me, that was a major L in my performance of legal services. So here's the thing. A lot of us think that our clients want a winning result as quick as possible at an affordable price. How many people believe that's what your clients are looking for? They want you to win big for them, really fast, and for really cheap. Right? They're like, it's not done already? I just called you 5 hours ago. Right? And what I realize is a lot of us are setting up our practices that way, but when you listen to things like the Clio Trends report and a lot of other data that's out there, what our consumers are actually saying is they want connection. They want empathy. They want value. And how many of us are thinking about the ways in which we are offering those things in our quick, fast, winning results that we're providing to our clients? To sum it up, they want an experience, not just a set of deliverables. And if you leave here with nothing else today, I want you to take that with you. What you are offering to your clients and legal consumers is not just a contract or a divorce decree or, a plea deal or just getting off of a case. That's not just what you're offering to them. You are offering them an entire experience. And for many of them, this may be the first time or the only time that they are encountering the legal system, and the experience that they have with you is what they will take with them around what they think the law is and how it impacts their lives. And so I want to remind you that the law is more than just a set of rules. It is a collection of stories. How many of you have been in some sort of legal marketing session today? Anyone hear anything about storytelling? A lot of times what we are told in terms of being better able to market our practices and get the clients that we want is being able to share with them stories that help them understand the transformation that they will receive, how you can help them get that transformation. And that's the thing about the law also. It's not just this is legal or illegal. It's also a story that got there. And I want you to remember your client's story as you are preparing your cases, as you are reviewing your documents, as you're thinking about your marketing, as you're thinking about how you're going to engage your client on the first call, on the last call. These are stories that they are collecting and creating. You're creating and they are collecting stories along the way. And it is our job to help our clients tell their story. And if you need a masterclass in storytelling or sort of understanding what it means to move yourself from the protagonist and sort of become the guide in your story, I recommend Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand. He really lays out that what we are doing, like any great cinematic movie, is we are showing up as the guide to a protagonist who has a problem, who's seeking a solution, who meets a guide that helps them get to that solution. It's our goal, our charge, to help them get to that solution and see themselves as the winner in the story. And so I'm asking you today to make a shift from thinking about your representation as something that you do on behalf of your clients, and actually something that you do alongside your clients. I'm asking you to go from being the hero or the heroine in the story, from being the one who makes the call, being the one who retains all the knowledge and gains the transformation, and actually thinking about how you can position your clients to be the heroes in their own story. How you can empower your clients to make great decisions about how they want to move forward with the case, using your legal knowledge and experience in the system as a reference, but actually allowing them to make decisions because you are equipping them to make better decisions. and to ensure that your clients leave you with a new set of developed skills and knowledge. And so you might be thinking, that sounds great, Nkoyo. Pie in the sky, it's beautiful, I got lots of things to do, billing, all these other things. How do I actually get there? And so I want to share with you 5 ways that you can shift towards a more client-empowered law practice today. So the first shift that I want you to think about is how you can be intentional. None of this happens by default. Even for those of us who are like, real gung-ho, we're thinking about inclusion, we're thinking about humanity and dignity and all those things, we have blinders also because we have access to different levels of power and privilege. And so how are you thinking about sharing that power and privilege with your clients every single day? What does that mean that your intake process needs to look like? What do client calls need to include? How are you drafting your documents and presenting them to your clients so they understand what's happening in the process? None of those things happen just because we practice the way that we've been practicing for eons. Like if that were the case, the data that was out there about client satisfaction with the legal profession as a whole would be dramatically different. And so if you're going to make the shift, you have to be intentional, thinking about what's the role that you have and what are the shifts that you can make that puts your client in a better position than if they had gone to any other attorney, but even beyond that, puts them in a better position to navigate the legal system with or without you. And I know that can sound scary, but I'm going to tell you that most of our clients want to work with us. We make it harder for them to work with us than the alternative, right? So even if you're giving them the information and you're helping them understand how a process works, it doesn't mean that they're not going to come back to you to do the work or to work with you in that process, but it means that you're putting them in a better position to interact with you and a system, which can also lead to different sort of tension and conversations with your clients. But I think if we're really going to build the future of law in a way that is more honoring of what it means to have a just system, we have to change the imbalance in power in a lot of these relationships and structures. Next, I would love for you to be introspective, to check your ego and your biases, your assumptions, and also to question your truths. A lot of us have, because of the system that we work in, some not so great beliefs or thoughts about clients that may impact the way that we represent them, and we may not even know. I'll take myself, for example, with this client that I had, I assumed that because I had the Ivy League education and the JD, that I knew what was best. And she could, share what she thought and all those types of things, but I didn't really give her the regard in her situation that I should have because I assumed that I knew better because I knew about this one sliver of information, resources, and systems that were impacting her life. And so I want you to think about some of your clients. Are you assuming that your knowledge is superior to their knowledge because you have a certain set of skills that may only be a fraction of what's impacting their circumstances in general? And if that's the case, you don't have to raise your hand and say that here. What are some things that you can do or say to yourself to remind yourself to truly be an active listener, to really be thinking about what your clients are saying and needing, and to deliver on that to the extent that it makes sense in your practice? And that bleeds into my third shift, is to be aware. What we do as lawyers is literally just a portion of what's going on in our clients' lives. It's not the sum total of everything. And in fact, I don't know if anyone's ever been on a call, intake call, particularly consultation, and the potential client is there rattling off about a million things that you're like, none of this is relevant to like whether X, Y, and Z happens, right? Well, that's the reality, is that this legal issue fits inside of something else that's going on in their lives. And there may be reasons why they want to make one decision versus another that has nothing to do with whether the facts of this case align with the law, but like what the implications of those might be on other aspects of their lives. And so I love to just encourage you to not have such tunnel vision and only think about the legal issues, but how does the legal solutions that you're creating, how does this experience that they're going to fit into the rest of their lives? I'm not asking you to solve everything else that's going on in their lives, not at all. I'm asking you, though, to keep in mind that this is a part of the story that's going on in their lives and be honoring of that. And I love this quote by James Baldwin, that not everything is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And it's funny because I literally was just at dinner last night and we were talking about sometimes, someone reaches out to you and they're looking for, you might be a business attorney and they're like, yeah, I've never filed my taxes, like I need a CPA, and that's not what you do, right? Like, I don't know, and you could literally just be like, yeah, that's a problem, you need to do that, like there could be an issue. Or you could be like, hey, here's a really great CPA or a tax accountant or someone that you can reach out to. And that's the thing. It's not here that you have to solve everything, but sometimes by listening, you may hear other things that will directly impact your case or your client's ability to really focus and attend on what you all are doing, that you can provide a resource towards. I was an education attorney. I represented families in school discipline cases, special education cases, for many, many years. And what I knew is I could get you really straight on the law, but you might need a speech-language pathologist. You might need some sort of evaluation over here. I don't do those things, but I made it my business to know who was the best person to do those things so that I could direct you to one or two people, and you're not searching on Google for hours, getting really stressed out, trying to solve something that I could at least help point you in the right direction. And that came from being aware. They didn't just need me to fight the school to make sure that they had access. They needed all these other things as well. Number 4, be accessible, or at least appear accessible, right? There's a lot of technology that's out there and processes that can enable you to be reachable to your clients in a way that still allows you to have boundaries for yourself. What do I mean? You could use schedulers. I'm a fan of Calendly. I know Clio has a lot of really great integrations in there. But by thinking about when does it make sense to communicate with my clients, what should I communicate with them, what information would it be helpful that they have so that when we meet the next time, it's easier for us to move through to where we need to go, and thinking about those things and being intentional about it. The other piece that I would add, just from my teacher hat, is like, reading a long memo or alert or case status update may not be the most effective way to share with your client about what's going on. Can you make a video? Can you create an infographic? Can you show them the process and the steps of what's going to happen in a case from the beginning to the end that you can refer back to each time you get to a milestone? We were here, now we're here, this is what you can expect, here's where we're going. What are the ways that you can walk them through this process so that they understand the experience that they're going through and they're not just sort of waiting for you to be able to say something so that they know what's going forward? And I will add as a pro tip, as someone who works at a state bar where we see a lot of the complaints and things like that come in, is like, this is what they're asking for. They're just like, I have no idea what's going on. I can't reach my attorney. I don't know where anything is. But if you process that out and you give them a map and the touch points, it can cut down on a lot of things. And it doesn't actually have to take as much of your time. And in fact, I can promise you that it will help you to make up time and move faster. So really thinking about how you can create accessibility for your clients so they can see beyond what's happening in your practice without you always having to be the person delivering that information. And last but not least, and actually the most important, which is why I put it last, is that we need you to be you, unapologetically. When I started practicing, I had on the mantle of what I thought a lawyer looked like and what I thought they should do and how they should talk and all those types of things. And it was wrong for my audience, for the people that I wanted to serve. It didn't fit. And in fact, many of them came to me because they thought, I'm going to get something different from this woman who maybe looks like me, who maybe has a background that's similar to mine, and they were getting much of the same. And if our legal system is going to survive this moment in time, I think it's going to be because more of us start showing up as actual humans and recognizing the humanity of the people that we work with, the clients that we serve, and even ourselves, right? I don't know how many of you might be like me who thought you had to know the answer to everything, you couldn't be wrong, you had to show up as like the expert in front of your clients, and it's exhausting. And it's really challenging to do deep work, transformative work for each client when you're assuming that you have to always know it all. And I remember one time with a parent who had a child who had a lot of challenges in the school system, and we both sat there and were just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's the best next step. Like, here are some options, but I don't actually know exactly where we should go. And I will tell you that that client, I could call her any day of the week, and she would sing my praises and tell other people to come and get their services, that I'm gonna take care of their children, because we sat in the trenches as humans and recognized that this isn't always clean and easy to do, but like, we're gonna figure it out. And sometimes taking off that hat of like, I must be the expert and I'm putting on my representative to go out and deliver services is actually impeding people from finding you or feeling like you're really going to give them that empathy, connection, and value that they're seeking. So I encourage you, not just for yourselves and for your clients to be yourselves, but also for the future generation of lawyers that are coming up who are looking at us to figure out what the future of the law looks like. So with that, I want to turn it over for any questions, comments, suggestions, feedback, whatever you have. I think there's a mic that's circulating around there, so I'll open it up.
So you're making a recommendation to a client, and the client wants you to take an approach that you know is not only going to be legally questionable, but may not be the best strategic approach, but they're married to it. How do you handle those kind of situations?
Great question. So how do you handle it when your client wants you to take an approach that either is legally questionable or not the best approach strategically? I think you have a direct conversation with them. I think you explain to them why something may or may not be advantageous to them. As fierce as I might appear sometimes, was not like your pit bull in the skirt type of attorney. Like, that was not me at all. I'm not gonna fight, I'm more of a collaborator. How do we get to a resolution? I had a client who very much felt like I wasn't effective because I wasn't yelling at the opposing counsel or the other side, right? And we had to have a conversation about the theatrics of what the law looks like on TV and what actually gets to a result. And so my recommendation, and it's not always foolproof, is to go back to what is the result that we want to see. Ultimately, what is it that you want to see happen? And here's the reason why this might be a better strategy than that to get there. And if that, if we can't get there on we agree that maybe this is a better strategy and we're gonna try, I think if it's unethical, then you have a responsibility to let them know that you cannot assist them moving forward in that way. And I think if it's not necessarily unethical and you're trying to figure out how do you make this work for your clients, I think it's, again, having those conversations and being very clear about what you can deliver and what you know can be a better strategy and why, given your experience in the law, and providing those examples. Because I think sometimes they see what's happening on TV and think that's what it's supposed to look like. And that's not always, that's made for TV. If we showed people what it really looked like to practice law, that show would have been maybe 1 or 2 episodes, it'd be over. I saw another hand. Yeah.
You mentioned a book that we should read, Miller. Can you repeat the name of the book and the author, please?
Yes, Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. I think it's an incredible book. I use that to think about how I was going to interact with my clients, but it's also really great for building your brand and marketing and PR and lots of things. But yes, sir.
So you mentioned having a referral network for the other issues that your clients deal with, and I've done a little bit of that, but I'm curious if you have tips on how to build a strong, useful referral network when your clients have such a broad array of issues. Like, we deal with people that have mental health issues and divorce issues and financial issues and housing issues. Like, how do you build a good referral network to deal with that broad swath of problems?
Yeah, this is how I approached it. I took down a list. Like, every time someone asked, so the question was, how do you build a robust referral network for people if you have lots of different challenges or adjacent issues? So every time someone came up with Nkoyo, I need this, I was like, great, I'm going to go and figure out how I find people who are doing that. What are the different communities that are around? So I worked in special education, so a lot of my clients had some sort of disability, and so there are a lot of associations or nonprofits or organizations that might focus on a specific exceptionality. So for example, if there might be a whole autism network, and so I'm like, let me get plugged in over there and figure out who's there, so that even if I can't directly send someone a name, I can at least say, hey, there's this network, and here's the resource that they use to be able to figure that out. I also had education and nonprofit clients, so like different issues over there in terms of, I need a CPA. Like, we haven't filed our 990 and I don't know how long, and now we've lost our tax exempt status. Like, different sort of set of issues. So figuring out, like, around whatever your practice area is, like, what are the things that are adjacent to it? And I think if you're struggling to figure out where are all the places, listening to your clients around what they're asking you about or what they're talking about that they're struggling with beyond just your matter can be really instructive around who should I talk to. And then I think, using your social media networks, just about everybody's online in some place. So, figuring out what organizations are there and trying to get plugged in, or having someone on your team figure that out. I've also used a VA to go out and find all the names and emails so that I could then do sort of like a campaign to introduce myself and run it that way. But it's, again, human to human, right? So building those relationships. I think I have time for maybe one last question.
Hey, so I love your approach about centering the client and showing up with a lot of compassion. Sometimes, not all the time, I don't think it's the rule, but there are outliers where clients then adopt you as like their person in life. And then it can be hard to be caring and compassionate while trying to draw those lines. So I don't know, I mean, it's on a case-by-case basis, but in case you have any good hacks for setting up healthy boundaries after showing up in that way, that you did with that mom.
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
How do you step back from that?
I love that, and I think that's really important too about the boundaries. And I find, and I'm not gonna make a generalization, maybe just myself, maybe some of you all feel this way too, but maybe you have issues with boundaries or like protecting your boundary, even if you've put it up and you're like, I do this, but then they're like, they tell you the sob story, and now you're suddenly figuring out how to like file something that has absolutely nothing to do with your practice. I want to ask you, I've been there. I'm like, I don't even do this, and I don't know how I'm figuring this out. But I think it's one, setting your boundaries and honoring those boundaries. And I think the other thing that I at least did as my strategy was trying to find all the adjacent people that I could send you to. I can't help you with that. I understand that that's really a challenge. I know you love me as your lawyer, I love you too, but like, effective legal counsel looks like X, and I can't deliver that for you, but here are places that you can go to get that. Which isn't always, doesn't always work, nothing's always foolproof, but I think it starts with that intentionality at the beginning and like really setting your boundaries also around like how much of yourself you're gonna give, how much support you can offer in things that are not necessarily directly related to your practice. It's a great question. Other people have suggestions? Any people really great with like setting boundaries? Well, if there are no more questions, I think we're at time. Thank you. I'll just leave you with this one thing, this one question as you're moving through the rest of this conference today and the remainder of this week. How will you wield your power?